Pi Day 2025. As always, I have my $3.14 pie from Publix, because they always have the Pi Day sale. And I really like pub subs and the cloud and abstract reasoning. And I know this video's nerd, and one thing that has been really on my mind is this idea of how humans are not symmetric. And here's why. If I cut my hands off, it's a morbid thought, my hands could not symmetrically overlay on each other. I'm not symmetric across some imagined four-dimensional axis that assumes that my hands would be symmetric. Because if I was symmetric, then my hands would be symmetric to each other unto itself, instead of being chirally related. They're mirror images. They're mirror images only when they're attached to me, but not separate, which means that I'm symmetric across a different axis other than just my existing three-dimensional axis. I've been thinking about n-spheres a lot, and my compass is in the makerspace somewhere. Otherwise, I would draw and label my Penrose triangle compass construction. But if we start, it's easy enough. You start with the seed of life, and extrapolate that to an entire supposed dimension and dimensions, by supposing vertices and planar intersections along the, if you connect the intersection points within the seed of life, you get a sort of isometric grid, defined by spherical coordinates, where each step between these intersections are of size dx, relative to the actual radius of the n-sphere, which is, the radius would be 2 pi, or the radius would be half of the diameter, which would be 2 pi, or tau. Hence why I like tau much more, because mathematics is based upon this fundamental assumption of tau rather than pi, hence the unit circle being in terms of 2 pi and not pi, because all of our math is based on the radius, because a compass can draw a radius based on radiuses, the center point and its direction. I'm seriously at the point where my name is vector, because I have magnitude and direction, except it's like tensors and lattices at this point. But I am known to have stolen parts of monuments from around the world. Literally had a piece of a Parthenon, so I'm gonna steal the moon, guys. There was a lunar eclipse this past night. I stole the moon, but I am the moon. My birth name literally means moon, so I literally stole the moon. I'm the moon. God damn it, moon. Anyways, so you have this structure, right? And you have this relationship between these lattice points, which are at dx units from the centers of each n-sphere, and at this point you have the locally defined angle, which defines the heading of this n-sphere, and this heading can be assumed to be this tensor encoding within the Hilbert space, collapsed into one dimension, um, assuming the n spheres, right? Each dimension's a long n. Um, using Cantor diagonals. Um, and now you have this vector, right? All tensors are effectively vectors at the end of the day. Um, but now you have this vector in n space that defines some sort of path. And it defines these epicycles of how of orientation, epicycles of orientation, so to speak. And you can join these when these epicycles, they line up along, I guess, diagonals, because you are trying to trace the diagonals within this architecture of n sphere space. But you can create the Penrose triangle within it. You can create any dimension within it. It's like having once you learn how to use the n sphere compass, and you still have a straight edge, right? Because you need vertices, a place, your faces, which is the n sphere, and lines, vertices, edges, and faces. So the edge, which defines the poles that connect these epicycles, so to speak, and these epicycles sort of change and like almost like if you've seen the Fourier transforms sort of trace out different harmonies at different frequencies. And so you can imagine, one can imagine these spheres being of differing I mean, to be fair, a sphere did visit me when I was um 13 and I took geometry in Zelamse. We stayed we stayed in a lodge in Zelamse, Austria, and I traveled the world, and I have it. It's a 1.11 geometry project. It's still on my channel. It's one of my earliest things. It's just the context that I was in a goddamn lodge taking that. Anyways, yeah, they put that up for extra credit to see how I'd handle it. Yeah, now I watched Flatline in the class, and now A Sphere is trying to help me deliver his message. I think it's an M sphere. M sphere, N sphere, NV sphere, vertices, edges, faces sphere. But anyways, there's also pointers. There's vertices, edges, faces, and pointers. Pointers do not have to directly be connected to something. You can have an implied connection to another object despite and the pointer is an implied relationship. That's fields. That's what fields look like. And you can have single vector fields, or they are like tensor fields, right? And at that point, you're being able to visualize how matter and mass are all these points in space and time. And when you get down to the fundamental level, you have these fields, and these fields are pointers, an implied relationship to oneself, and how these fields can interact with other fields, like how protons and electrons, like a proton is a single directional field this way, an electron is a single directional field this way, and they have the different quarks, the different quark configurations that have the 2/3 negative, positive, and they're all in terms of thirds, which, if you look at geometry, everything does seem to be defined by 60-degree angles and isometry. The 3 appears quite a bit in our conception of space-time and in the standard model. But gravity is a sort of self-referential, or gravity is a pointer. It points into itself. If this is proton, where it loops back into itself, I think I should go like that. That's a proton, and that's an electron. They have different directions, so that when they point to each other. Um, they point to each other, um, and then you have the other types of implied relationships, which effectively understand flux across surfaces, your faces, and pointers in pointers in a direction we cannot access. Gravity, I think, ultimately is how that pointer relates to other points, regardless of uh, space, of physical space, which is why gravity is like a pointer, because when you're dealing with pointers, you're dealing with contiguous blocks of memory, right? And how that memory has its stop point and its end point, and how if you try to reach another one, you'd get a set fault, right? But using pointers, you you still can access you still access what you can access, right? Uh, but you're still fundamentally accessing a non-contiguous block of memory, um, and gravity, in that sense, is how things point to each other. Um, Hence why this thing, its gravity points towards Earth, and the Earth's gravity also points towards it. We often forget that we also have our own gravities, even as small as it is. We're just overwhelmed by the Earth, but we are gravity. We are creating gravitational waves simply because we have mass, um, and so one can assume that there is a pointer towards a direction that connects us across time, or whatever has you, through memory and thinking of each other, which was the point of Interstellar. I don't have any, unfortunately, any videos of me being TARS at MegaCon, or photos, because I was having a moment there. But if I really did sort of stumble across the singularity, I'm very close to sort of conceptualizing this mathematical representation of space as n-spheres. And there's a great album out there about n-spheres, but I had this construction done a while back. It's probably in the background of some of my videos. But as far as I'm aware, that construction does not seem to exist anywhere on the internet, and that scares me because discovering a new compass construction, whether I discovered it or whether it's being hidden, is a bit terrifying if you understand the symbolism of it. But yeah, I do have a Penrose construction uh, by the compass, um, one that I haven't seen before, at least with the Seed of Life. And I realized that that can be used to construct literally anything when you allow for dx hemispheres placed on the vertices of a generalized n simplex, which is a generalized tetrahedron. Um, and when you have that generalized tetrahedron with dx spheres on it, you can represent anything through epicycles, assuming the relationship between each uh, point in the simplex is topologically isometric, which would, from the perspective of each denizen of uh, epicycle constructions, which you can think to be consciousness or whatever have you, um, the beings, whatever is considered to be a constituent being and mutual being, mutual awareness of one another through through pointers, and recognition of sight of one another. It would be effectively a way to generalize space to big omega in types and infinities, because topologically all is Cantorian space, 2 dimensions, and that's ultimately flatland, because everything can be seen through that lens of the seed of life, assuming that you allow for topological consistency and deformity, while also preserving length as a dx as a metric of the compass width, while also just maintaining the relationships between the connections between things as isometric to the seed of life space, in space. And let's have some pie, shall we? I got a new vape today. I went to a vape store and a type of Delta 8 that literally has a picture of a compass on it. I got it. We could say these thoughts are stoner thoughts. If you want to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. You must first invent time. It's all in this video. There was the empty set. Eventually, something was going to change because, yeah, these are your transcendental scalars. Scalars have to exist before vectors. The vertices. And that must change through dx or delta x, however many dimensions you can access or one axis. And imaginary numbers are a thing. One accesses them through a complex virtualizations. At that point, when you're storing data, you gotta have a working system of axioms that provide Turing completeness to reach every possible state. It all started with a huge explosion. Gradually the universe cooled, blah blah blah. Quantum particles being fundamental building blocks of life. Gravity is a pointer. Calabi-Yau manifold. Something hydrogen, protons. Hydrogen ions are a proton with a need. Holes have meaning. Electron holes are not the same thing as a proton without an electron. It's a proton with a need. Electron comes to fill it. Neutrons, I guess. Neutrons do stuff. Works. All the way there. And somewhere in there. You got your periodic table. Well, you get your hydrogen, helium. Your stars, you get your hydrogen, stars. They form helium. And particles eventually star explodes, forms heavier elements, heavier elements, heavier elements. They form Earth, planets, moons, stuff that has other stuff around it. Those orbits. Orbits on different scales. It's all orbits, all epicycles. And how epicycles propagate to the resonance of these cycles at scale, periodicity, space is time. Tachyons, memory, Earth forms beings that can understand itself to incompleteness. Someone eventually invents Publix, time, the year, based on the Earth. Publix sells. We discovered pie. Publix sells cake for pie for no particular pie. Yeah, but if you invent if you reverse engineer the universe, you can figure out how to make an apple pie from scratch. So I guess I've made an apple pie from scratch by visualizing how the universe could have made it from scratch.